Hello friends and viewers, and welcome to my pre-release character analysis for Kvare, the Finance Minister of Iria. In case you weren't aware, Kvare will debut on global servers on March 28th. As a disclaimer, this is not a character guide, this is a preliminary analysis of Kvare's characteristics and skills prior to his global release. I will only be covering his unique skills, so this will not be a full overview of all of his learnable skills. My goal is to help you understand what Kvare will bring to Sword of Convallaria's current character roster. The information presented here is prone to being wrong. Anyone smarter and with more experience than me can correct me. Lastly, the stat and skill information in this slide is courtesy of the No Potion website. Starting off with the basics, Kvare is a staff-wielding magical destroyer. He boasts a very high base speed of 272, and this places his speed below Tair's 288 speed, but above Simona's 271 speed. He specializes in delivering and empowering damage over time effects and piercing damage, as well as inflict some debuffs. Kvare is a member of the Night Crimson, Iria, and Fortitude categories, benefiting from leaders' auras such as Layla, Dentalion, and Magnus. Kvare's trait is Roster. Kvare will possess an additional skill, Roster, on his action bar. This is an instant skill that costs 2 energy. Roster, the active skill, inflicts the roster and life loss debuffs on enemies without roster for 3 turns. Depending on star level, this can be used up to 1 to 2 times per round, and depending on star level, when using the skill roster for the first time each turn, it can refund 1 to 2 energy. Roster, the debuff, inflicts 2 random level 2 debuffs on the target for 2 turns. When the roster debuff ends, or when the target is attacked and enters the dying state, Kvare immediately summons an assassin to attack the character, dealing 100% of Kvare's magic attack as piercing damage, then removes roster. This cannot be dispelled or immunized. When roster is removed from enemy targets, Kvare's attack and defense will increase by 5% up to 20%, lasting until the end of battle. At the end of Kvare's turn, he will also cast a roster skill on the closest enemy without roster within 5 tiles of him. Kvare's initial skill is Conviction. This is a single target skill with a range of 1 to 4 tiles, costs 2 energy, and has a 0 turn cooldown. It deals 100% of magical attack as life loss, and inflicts the move 1 and speed 2 debuffs on the enemy target for 2 turns. If cast on targets with roster, Conviction will also dispel all their buffs before attacking, and additionally deal damage equal to 100% of Kvare's magical attack. The duration of the inflicted life loss from this skill is reduced by 1 turn. In other words, casting Conviction on enemies with roster will immediately inflict 1 turn of life loss damage they would have taken without roster. Will of Victory is one of his learnable rank 1 options. This is a selection of 6 skills cycled from top to bottom per the tooltip. This is not a decision skill, and each skill can only be cast once per battle. Will of Victory, an instant skill which grants the potential burst buff to the target. Flaming Winds, which deals 60% fire AoE damage to enemies within range and inflicts 2 stacks of Ignition. Ignition is a type of life loss debuff that deals damage over time equal to 25% of the sum of the character's physical and magical attack. Fortune of All, an instant skill which recovers all energy of the target. Chill of Ocean, which deals 100% ice AoE damage to enemies within range and inflicts Frostbite. Frostbite is a type of life loss debuff that deals damage over time equal to 50% of the sum of the character's physical and magical attack. Golden Power, an instant skill which recovers all HP of the target. And lastly, Wrath of Thunder, a single target attack which deals 180% damage, dispels all buffs on the target before attacking, and immediately triggers roster and all damage over time effects on the target before attacking. Victory Before Battle and Kvare's Gift are his learnable rank 3 skills. Victory Before Battle is a passive skill that recovers 20% HP, restores 1 energy, and gains random level 2 buffs for 2 turns each time an enemy with roster is defeated in battle. Kvare's Gift is an active ability that can only be used once per battle. This skill heals the target for 40% of Kvare's magical attack and causes the target to share 50% of damage taken by Kvare for 2 turns, with a single share not to exceed 70% of Kvare's max HP. Against enemies, this skill inflicts stun for 1 turn. And for allies, it grants them attack 2, damage 2, and damage reduction 2 buffs for 2 turns. Kvar's gift may be useful to set up burst damage on short maps or used for objective-based maps with NPCs, but it is also hindered by its single use per battle. Sanctuary Emblem is one of his learnable reaction skills. When Kvare is hit by an AoE attack, he grants all allies within 2 tiles of him with a shield corresponding to the damage type equal to 30% of his HP for 2 turns. The shield of each type can only be triggered once per battle. When Kvare possesses a shield, damage taken is reduced by 10%. This skill is contingent on being hit by AoE attacks and again can only trigger each shield type once per battle. This reaction skill will excel when you are able to identify sources of AoE physical and magical damage, but it is not a source of constant damage mitigation like most reaction skills. When playing this skill, HP becomes a throughput stat as the shield scales with Kvare's HP. The more HP Kvare has, the greater the value his external shields will be. Keep in mind Kvare has 10% damage reduction when he has a shield, and the shield source does not have to be from this reaction, it can come externally via gear or allies. This is the moment for Rain and Wither are Kvare's rank 11 options. Expect to invest a Castalia at this rank. This is the moment for Rain deals 40% of magical attack as piercing damage to all enemies within 6 tiles of the character. It triggers and removes all damage overtime effects on enemies hit, and if enemies hit have the roster debuff, then this skill additionally inflicts 4 debuffs: Piercing Vulnerable 2, blocks reaction skills, blocks passive skills, and inflicts Isolate for 2 turns, and triggers and removes roster after attacking. Wither is a passive skill that modifies This is the moment for Rain and adds a life loss passive effect. With Wither, This is the moment for Rain no longer triggers and removes damage over time effects on enemies hit, but instead increases damage by 100%. Additionally, when actively dealing damage with non-instant skills, Kvare will inflict 60% of magical attack as life loss for 1 turn. Nightmare Puppet is Kvare's astral imprint or signature weapon. Depending on star level, it increases attack and defense by 4 to 10%. After dealing damage, it inflicts 1 random level 1 debuff on the target. And depending on star level, if using a debuff skill, the effect changes. After attacking, inflicts 1 random level 1 to 2 debuff and Nightmare Puppet 1 to 3 for 2 turns. Nightmare Puppet is a debuff that increases piercing damage taken by 5 to 15%, and this cannot be dispelled or immunized. To summarize, Kvare is a piercing damage dealer who inflicts damage over time effects and attribute debuffs. He also has few infrequent support skills to heal, restore energy, or grant external shields. He can be built for single target or AoE damage, but his trait prefers maps with multiple enemies. Kvare is worth pulling for. With his ability to increase piercing and damage over time effects, he will be even more worthwhile if you have other piercing and damage over time dealers in your character roster. This is my work in progress pocket guide for Kvare. Aside from his Nightmare Puppet astral imprint, he truly has versatile weapon options to choose from. His trinkets will prefer attack increases or piercing damage effects, but you can also take advantage of his high base speed to use Old Scrolls of August. For Taros, Devil pairs well with his trait, but Magician and Fortune are great options also. That concludes this character analysis. Please let me know in the comments what you think of Kvare and if you plan to pull for him. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.